Hey everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. It's just a couple of days until Turkey Day, and I know I can't wait to get started eating some turkey and dressing, all the trimmings on the side. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. But before we get it started, I wanted to share with you a story that my grandmother Mildred once shared with me years ago when I was a little kid. I loved hearing her tell this story. It was so funny, just a really cute story for Thanksgiving. And this really happened way back in 1941. My grandmother Mildred grew up in Townley, Alabama. It was a really small town, and she lived in a really small house there. She had four brothers and four sisters, a total of nine children crammed into that little bitty house in Townley, Alabama. Here's how small that little house was. They only had two bedrooms, actually three, counting the one the mama and daddy shared, but all the boys shared a bedroom and all the girls shared the other bedroom. So it was very packed, very tight in that little house. So you can imagine what it was like on holidays when relatives came gathering to spend the holiday with them. Folks would come traversing from all parts of the state of Alabama just to come spend Thanksgiving with the Carrolls up in Townley. And Mama Carol would always fix a nice, big, beautiful meal with turkey and homemade dressing and the pies and all the trimmings, anything you can imagine. The smells were just amazing out here. And my grandmother Mildred always helped her do the cooking on Thanksgiving. Well, about this time, Thanksgiving of 1941, Mildred was 16 years old, so she was old enough to do a lot of heavy cooking with her mama. She loved doing it in the kitchen there, just helping her create all that beautiful food. And the relatives would gather in the living room, or as many as they could cram in there, where Daddy Carroll, or Will was his name, would sit around smoking his favorite tobacco out of his pipe and share stories about family and Thanksgivings past. My grandmother had a younger brother named C.W. who loved to play with fire. And of course, where was he? Right in front of the fireplace, poking at the flames. He loved it. Nice little rascal. Every once in a while, you could hear Will scream out, "C.W., you stop that. Cut that out, boy. You're going to set this house afire." Well, after a while, the heat in the kitchen got too much for Mildred to bear, so she decided to make a little hasty retreat, take a little break. And she went back to the girls' bedroom, which at the time was empty because all the kids were outside playing games. She went in the bedroom and laid across the bed and stared up at the ceiling and just laid there sprawled out, her hair fanned out on the pillow there, and stared up at the ceiling, counting the cracks up there. Daddy never would get that ceiling fixed. He promised he would, but he never would get around to it, so the cracks got bigger every year. And Mildred would sit there and just try to count them and relax. She found herself almost in a trance when suddenly a little flicker up there caught her eye. She kind of sat up and looked. About that time in the front room, she heard her daddy having a conversation. He had just scolded C.W. one more time. "C.W., boy, get away from that fireplace. You're going to set this place on fire." One of the uncles sitting in there said, "Well, Will, what would you do if this house were to catch a fire?" Will pointed toward the door where his old blue hat hung on a knob there next to the door. He'd say, "I'd grab my old hat and I'd run." Well, meanwhile, back in the bedroom, my grandmother was looking closer at the ceiling, and she saw that flickering up there in the attic space up there above the ceiling through the crack there. And as she gazed closer, she realized there was a flame up there, a fire. So she called out, "Daddy, might want to grab your old hat and run, because this house is afire." From the living room, Will shouted back, "Girl, what you talking about? What's that nonsense?" "Oh, you're a lie. This house ain't on fire." "I'm telling you, Daddy, it's on fire. Come back here and look." So he got up, and you could hear his footsteps clomping down the hallway as he came down to the bedroom. And he came in, and he walked over and looked up at the ceiling, and sure enough, he saw those flames up there flickering through the crack in the ceiling. He took off down that hallway, he grabbed that hat, and he hit that door. Off he went. The rest of the family spilled out the door after him so they could go out and take a look, and sure enough, up on the house, the roof on one side, there where the bedrooms are, had caught on fire. So Will ran straight to the barn and grabbed his ladder and came running back, placed it against the house, and he shouted out. And my grandmother Mildred and C.W. were both standing there nearby. He said, go to that drum of water over there and bring me some buckets of water. They kept this big old barrel of water near the house. I always kept it full of water where they could drink or wash off. And it was probably about 5 or 6 gallons. It was a pretty heavy barrel, but they ran to the barrel, started filling the buckets up and taking them to the ladder where Daddy Carroll was there waiting. He climbed up on the roof with the buckets of water and he went to tossing. And he called out, bring me more! So Mildred and C.W. kept running back and forth to the barrel, bringing back buckets of water. They'd hand it up to Will, and he's up there sloshing it. The rest of the family run around screaming, get the neighbors, get the neighbors! So a few people ran off down the street to get the neighbors. Some of the other relatives started toting furniture out of the house, one piece at a time, while Will stayed up on the roof getting the water from Mildred and C.W. and tossing it. My grandmother said that a miracle happened. You know how sometimes when you get stressed out, you build up strength you never knew you had? Well, this happened with my grandmother. She ran over to that drum of water, and in just a stressful moment, she lifted up that huge barrel of water and went running all by herself to the ladder and handed it up to her daddy. Will struggled to lift that thing up. Like I said, it was about several gallons worth of water. But he pulled it up and onto the roof there, and he just was so frustrated, he just tossed that thing straight up in the air. All the water came back down on him, just poured down. He looked like a clown standing there, water dripping off the bill of his old hat. He just stood there slumped. But that didn't deter the family. They kept running, trying to get what they could to try to help put the fire out. By then, some of the neighbors were coming running down the road, and even one little old man even brought a bucket of milk. He just happened to be milking his cow out in the pasture at the nearby farm and saw the smoke coming up. So here he come running with his bucket of milk to hand that up and let Will toss that on the fire too. Meanwhile, Mama was just running back and forth across that front yard, hands up in the air, just hollering, oh Lord, my house, oh Lord, just running hysterical back and forth. One of the relatives saw a mattress laying there, so he picked it up and tried to be as gentle as possible. He went over, and when Mama came running by, he knocked her over on that mattress. He rolled her up, got her up into the mattress, and lifted it up under his hand, and off he ran. And Mildred stood there and watched him go. She said that Mama looked like a human burrito rolled up into the mattress up under his arm. He took her up to the top of the hill nearby there and dropped her there and let the mattress unroll, and she just laid there sprawled out, kind of in shock almost. Well, eventually, all the furniture had been toted out, and with the heroic acts of the neighbors that had joined in, bringing as much water as they could, they finally got the fire out, and only a portion of the house was burned. Well, automatically the assumption was C.W. must have been playing with fire, but it turned out after they looked through the damage there that it seemed a spark in the chimney had somehow gotten out. There was maybe a crack in the pipe leading up from the stove, and some sparks had flown out and across the attic floor and caught it on fire. And that's what started the fire there. But Mildred stood there and looked around at all the neighbors and family gathered there, and it really was an awesome sight to see them standing around. And they were excited when the fire was out, shaking each other's hands, patting each other on the back. They helped Will get down off the roof and gave him what water was left so he could drink it and get rehydrated. And eventually he looked around and said, "Where's your mama, kids?" And Mildred said, "Well, she's up here on the hill sprawled out on that mattress." So they all ran up there and they looked, and there was Mama sprawled out on the mattress. So Daddy helped her up, and he hugged her and said, "It's all right, honey. The house is fine. Part of the kitchen had burned, and part of one of the bedrooms had burned." But Mama just sobbed. She said, "My dinner, my beautiful dinner, it's ruined, it's burned, it's gone. The turkey, or actually it was a hen that she was cooking. The hen that was in the oven, it was Oh, it was so golden and beautiful, and the dressing and the pies, and oh, it's all gone up in smoke. All the trimmings are gone. They're gone. Well, a little voice piped up, of all people, CW popped up nearby. Well, Mama, not all of it's gone. The hen's okay. They all turned around and looked at him. Boy, what you talking about? While y'all was all busying yourselves hauling out the furniture, I got the more important thing. I went to the kitchen and got in the oven. I pulled out that Thanksgiving hen, and I ran it out here in the pot. I got all the way up there near the barn and put it up on top of that chicken shed. Well, they all rushed over to the chicken shed and looked, and sure enough, there was that pot with the Thanksgiving hen in it. They got it down, and Mama inspected it, and sure enough, it was still good, but all the sides and trimmings had burned up in the fire. Well, some of the neighbors piped up and said, Miss Carol, we can take care of that. Why don't we just all have ourselves a neighborhood Thanksgiving feast? We got plenty of food to share. And all the other neighbors chimed in, oh yeah, we got food. Yeah, at my house I got food too. So they all went to their houses and got their food and brought it to the Carroll house. And Daddy and some of the men put up tables, and not only the family but the neighbors gathered around there, and they had themselves a large Thanksgiving dinner right there in the front yard. So they had Mama's hen that she'd cooked and the trimmings and sides from all the neighbors. One of my grandmother's favorite verses was something Jesus said. He once said to his disciples, love your neighbors as you love yourself. Well, let me tell you, that's what those neighbors did back in 1941 on Thanksgiving Day in Townley, Alabama. And that's just the way it was. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope we learned something from this. Love each other, care for each other, and share with each other this Thanksgiving. And I thank you so much for listening and for allowing me to share another story with you. Again, happy Thanksgiving 2012. If you're traveling, have a safe travel. And thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving and love to all. Thanks.